What's up, people? Today I will be reviewing all three Predator films in 4K, and I got that coming up for you next. So guys, I had to lump all three Predator films in 4K into one video. I'm going to be getting through this really damn quick, and I will try to be thorough as possible. And starting off with the original Predator. What can I say that isn't already said about this movie? I love Predator. It's one of my favorite 80s movies. This is Arnold at one of his real peaks. He is incredible here, and all of the actors are really incredible here. You know, this movie takes, all of the archetypes that you have, the army archetypes. You got the funny guy, you got, you got the muscles, you got the brains, you got the demolition expert, and this and that. All of these guys have a whole lot of fun in their roles, and I hated seeing them all picked off. And the Predator himself, this has some truly great design work that went into the Predator. And man, this movie is just a lot of fun, and it's really one of my favorite popcorn movies. I give it a 10 out of 10. And now to talk about Predator 2. Oh boy. Look, I am not going to be the first person to actually tell you guys that Predator 2 is a huge, steep down from Predator. And if you didn't know, they have replaced Arnold with Danny Glover. Wow, this franchise fell really quickly. This is probably one of the biggest miscasts that you will ever see. It's terrible how Danny Glover tries his best to get through this movie, but clearly cannot live up to what came before him. I get that they're not trying to make him live up to Arnold, but come on, I mean, you can't not compare that, man. And the Predator himself in this movie, I know that he decides to move his game from the jungle to New York. There is a whole lot of intentional comedy that goes along with that doesn't play in this movie. This movie is just a freaking mess. The only redeeming quality is I can laugh at Gary Busey. And if I was to give this movie a solo grade, I'd give it a 3 out of 10. This is bad. And to get into Predators, this one I actually saw in theaters, and I did like this quite a bit. But this is also one of those movies that, coming back to it, I like it a little bit less. This is a very competent movie that really lives up to Predator, and I do like this movie. I just wanted to love this movie, and I kind of don't. I mean, it's an okay movie with okay action, and if I had to give it a solo review, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. So if I put all those scores into a blender and shook it up, I think that the fair score for all three films would be a 7 out of 10. Now, getting into the video quality here, because this is actually interesting, all of these films were given a 2K digital intermediate. And as far as the original Predator goes, this movie was done dirty on Blu-ray, and it was a DNR mess. Here, they have largely fixed that. A lot of the grain is intact in this presentation. So if you are a grain hater and you like your picture to be pristine, then you might not like this one. But for me, personally, when I grew up watching Predator, this is how I watched it before I got it on Blu-ray. This movie is meant to be dirty, and this is truly dirty. Along with that, though, because of the lack of DNR, you get a whole lot more detail, especially in the jungle when it becomes Arnold versus the Predator. And that is where HDR definitely kicks in as well. You get a pretty substantial difference as far as HDR in the jungle goes. This is a lot more vibrant, and the colors definitely pop off of the screen a lot more with HDR. And for that, I do have to think that this is the best that Predator has ever looked. But with that being said, I do have to give it a 7 out of 10. And as far as Predator 2 looks in 4K, this is a movie that I've actually thought has always looked pretty good, to be honest with you. I've always thought that this movie, on Blu-ray looked better than Predator looked. And here, it definitely keeps that up. The post-apocalyptic New York landscape definitely provides a lot more detail than Predator did. And then when you add in the HDR, that definitely helps out with the black levels from the Blu-ray. And the HDR definitely helps with the crushing of the reds that were on that previous Blu-ray. And for that, I would have to give this an 8 out of 10 as a solo effort. And to talk about Predators, this one, of course, was going to be the best looking one. But with that being said, that Blu-ray definitely was pretty fantastic, to be honest with you. And that leads this to really seem like the one that's kind of unnecessary. It does look better than the other two, but the detail isn't as much of an upgrade as Predator 2 and Predator was. And the HDR definitely helps out in the jungle scenes like in Predator, but it just isn't as substantial as Predators and Predator was. And for that, I do have to give this as a solo release an 8 out of 10. It's a solid effort. It's just the one that feels the most needless. And when you add up all of those scores, you come out to an 8 out of 10 for the entire box set. And to get into the audio quality, every single release here has the same audio that was on the previous release. So, DTS HD 5.1 it is. Predator seems like the release that could have used the Dolby Atmos upgrade the most. I've never really liked this audio track. I've heard it a lot, and it's always just okay, and it's just okay here. The field of sound feels very small. And bass response is pretty good. Speaker separation is and it just screams for an update. And I don't know if we will ever get one, to be quite honest with you. And for that, I do have to give this a 6 out of 10. It's just merely serviceable. Predator 2 steps it up the way that a sequel should. I definitely get more immersed here. This is a harder hitting audio track. And, you know, Predator gets a lot of gadgets in Predator 2. And you definitely hear that in your surrounds as well. But still, this should be a Dolby Atmos mix. I don't know why it isn't. I will give this an 8 out of 10 as far as a solo grade. And as far as Predators is concerned, this is the one that sounds the best. You know? And it should sound the best. The score here is a lot like the original Predator, but it is a better mix of it. And you definitely get a heavier surround use, and you get a more just fuller track with a better bass response that for a solo release I would give a 9 out of 10 to. So when you take all of those grades and you shake them up, and I have to give them an overall grade for the entire box set, I will give it a 7 out of 10 just because, hey, these should have been in Dolby Atmos, baby. As far as digital copies are concerned, this is a Movies Anywhere digital copy, but unfortunately, wherever you redeem it, it is only the high definition version. I can't exactly speak to the iTunes version just because of the fact that I actually don't have an Apple TV, but I will say that on Vudu, it is only high def for all the films. And as far as special features go on Predator, you get a decent amount here. You get a commentary with Joe McTiernan, and that is a really cool documentary that I actually like listening to him just talk about movies, because he is actually a really, really solid director. And then there is a weird commentary that is just white text. But on top of that, you get a half an hour worth of a making of doc and a lot of deleted scenes and stills. There is a whole lot just on the Predator side of things. And then when you jump into Predator 2, here you get not one but two audio commentaries where Stephen Hopkins, the director, flies solo for one of them. And hey, at least the guy's an entertaining guy to actually listen to. And then the writers of the film go solo on their own commentary. And as far as featurettes go, you have the typical making of featurette. And then it goes into the Predator and his upgrades and all of his weapons. And you get the typical theatrical trailers and deleted scenes. There's a decent amount on Predator 2 as well. And as far as special features goes on Predators, you get a commentary with Robert Rodriguez and Nimrod, and that goes into almost everything that has to do with this production. Robert Rodriguez does excellent work on commentary tracks, and the director here definitely does as well. And then you just have two animated shorts that serve as prequels to this movie. When you add in the fact that none of these are on the 4K disc and all of them are solely just what was already available on the standard Blu-ray releases, then I think that it is safe to say that as far as special features go here, you can give it a 7 out of 10. There is a lot here, but there is also nothing new here. And as far as my last looks at the entire series of Predator, you know, you can't do better than the original Predator. You just can't. Predator 2 was a serious step down, and Predators was an upgrade, but ultimately it just felt needless. Predator is the macho equivalent of a sci-fi movie that all macho guys will just say, hey, I like sci-fi, I like Predator. And when you add up all my scores for all three Predator films in 4K, that you come out to a 29 out of 40. Look, if you aren't a Predator enthusiast and you already have all of these films on Blu-ray, there is really no need to pick this up. But the video quality of each disc is a high to substantial uptick. So guys, I do have to review The Predator when it comes out in theaters in just a couple of weeks. But before that, I do have to review Upgrade. I actually picked this up as a bonus for you guys that I am going to be doing next. I'm going to be filming it right after this. And I have a whole lot coming out for you guys in September. So subscribe if you want to check those videos out. And YouTube will tell you when they come out, man. And as always, thank you for watching my videos. You guys are awesome, and you know that. And I will see all of you next time.